welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Alicia, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made this fabric wrap tumbler using a purple bandana. So unfortunately back in April we lost our Misty. She crossed the Rainbow Bridge, and I wanted to do a cup in remembrance of her. We rescued her 12.5 years ago. She was so super sweet and we miss her terribly, and we used to put a purple bandana on her, and I just wanted a cup to remember her by. So I'm going to show you how I fabric wrap this 3D heart I put on this. I used her ashes in the paw print, and then we have a jump ring here for her dog tag that I actually never got to put on her. I made it, but she wasn't wearing a collar at that point, and I was going to put it on, and then it was too late, unfortunately. But so I have it on the cup now, and I just put a little tassel on here for something cute. I did glitter the bottom because every girl needs something sparkly. And if you're interested to see how I did this, stick around and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Started with this cup. Okay, so I am starting out with a 20-ounce straight by Maker Flow. I would not do this on a taper. I will only do it on a straight skinny. It makes it so much easier for your seams. And so this is a pretty big bandana, and I really only want to use, and it's kind of a waste, but I really only want to use this part and the center part. So all of this is going to be kind of wasted. I'm going to try to, recycle it and figure out what to do with it. But on the last bandana I did, so if you look, you see this pattern here. So it's like tie-dye and stuff. So I actually cut this up into 4 pieces and can make 4 cups out of 1 bandana. So if you don't really care about the patterns, you can do 4 cups out of 1 bandana. And I ordered this one on Amazon, and I got it in this pack of all these different colors. Look how pretty. The orange, the blue, white. So I will link that in the description below. The red, look how gorgeous this teal is. And so you get all these different colors, so you can really, get creative with these. And, I just love sometimes, you see a fabric and you're like, wow, I really love that on a cup. So you know what? This is how you do this. All right, so I am going to measure this, and I'm going to leave overhang on both the top and the bottom initially. So I'm going to start, I'm going to cut the top, and it doesn't have to be straight. But I just, I don't want all this excess hanging over because it is going to get in the way. And you could use, I could still use this for a smaller cup. So if I wanted to do like a 15 ounce, I'm sure this, this would cover that no problem. So absolutely save your scraps. Don't chuck them because you can do something with them. All right. So, and I'm gonna actually trim the seam here at the bottom because it's been sewed. So I just don't want that to get in the way when I'm wrapping the cup. All right, so I'm cutting that. All right, now I am going to wrap this around, and I'm just gonna do kind of this mock wrap because I want to see where my seams are. So I'm gonna definitely cut. Yeah, I think these are going to meet really nice. So I'm going to just cut actually right on the outside here of this. On both sides. Now, if you had just, a piece of fabric that, didn't have any designs or, real designs on it, you could just, cut away. But for this, I'm following these lines. Make sure you got a good pair of scissors that cut really nicely, otherwise you're gonna fray a lot. And I mean, you can take care of that, but look, the less trouble you have with wrapping your cup, the better. So I have a lot of overlap. A lot more, but that's okay because we want overlap so that we have like a flap in which to use as a guide for our seam. So, all right, so I am going to, all right, I'm gonna start putting my Mod Podge on. And you can use a Mod Podge brush. I got this, I think I got this one in Michael's, but you can order them on Amazon or whatever, or get them in Michael's. So I'm just gonna put my glue on, and I'm gonna do a nice even coat. And my brush looks like this because it's like still a little bit wet from when I just did another cup. And so nice even coat on here. I'm gonna do this in sections. I am not going to do the whole cup because Mod Podge dries quick. And so I don't wanna run into a situation where my Mod Podge is drying and not sticking and creating bubbles underneath my fabric, because you want your fabric to be straight. And I'm gonna actually apply a little bit more because I want it to be a little bit wetter longer so that if I have to shift the fabric, I can just a little bit. So I'm actually gonna put a little bit more on now. Smooth strokes, it doesn't have to be perfect because you can smooth it out as you're pulling your fabric around. And you know, you're gonna see some Mod Podge come through, and that's totally fine because you're gonna seal this with Mod Podge on the outside anyway, so if it gets on the outside, it's not a big deal. And you're just gonna keep doing this all the way around. Now, if you wanna put your Mod Podge on the cup and just, you know, wrap like that, you can. I'm just doing it in sections. So it's up to you and how you wanna do it. You know, or what, you know, what you feel comfortable doing. I feel more comfortable doing it in sections. And just keep going around. And just pull it a little taut too. Like, don't pull it too hard, but just make sure, you know, you've got a little bit of tension on there. All right, and I'm coming around to my seam, which I'm not gonna do my seam just yet. So I want to make sure, I'm just going to do this, and I just want to make sure that my fabric, that my line at the bottom is even. And it looks pretty good to me. It might be a hair off. I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to overlap my seam. Not by a whole lot though. I'm just going to go over by like a ½ inch. All right, and I'm just gonna press that on here. All right, so I have this part that's not Mod Podge down, and that's where my seam is gonna be. And so, I'm gonna let this dry now. So I know people go right into doing their first coat of epoxy, or I'm sorry, first coat of Mod Podge to seal. I'm going to let this dry. And the reason why I'm gonna let it dry is because I feel like the fabric holds in moisture. And so if you start plopping, you know, a whole bunch of coats over there, although I'm still gonna let it dry overnight, I just feel like I want the initial coat to dry first before I start putting my coats over to make sure that the undercoat is dry. So I'm gonna let this dry for an hour, and I'm gonna come check on it and see what it's like. And I'm gonna leave everything on right now. So I will be back in a bit, okay? All right, so I'm back and I checked on this cup. It's been about an hour, hour and a half, and it feels nice and dry. The fabric does not feel wet. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to trim the excess off. I am gonna use the rim as a guide to going around, and I'm going to angle my scissors just a bit, and I'm just going to trim around that top. And If it's not perfect, it's okay, because we're gonna get the Mod Podge under there, we're gonna seal it really well, and then we're gonna sand it later on. And so I'm gonna do the same thing with the bottom. I'm gonna use the rim as a guide to cut the excess fabric. Some people fold it underneath and they like cover the bottom with the fabric. I'm not gonna do that because I'm gonna glitter the bottom. And so I'm just using my scissors to trim the excess. I do it on an angle, and I'm gonna again seal under that rim, the rim of the fabric really well. So I'm gonna do 3 coats of Mod Podge, but I'm only gonna show you the one. So I'm gonna go over it, and I like to, when I'm doing the Mod Podge, I like to go both directions. So I like to go up and down, and then I like to go side to side. I wanna make sure it gets in the fabric really, really well to give it a really good seal. I am going to leave that flap there. That flap does not get Mod Podge because that is our seam. So I will leave that floppy or flappy or whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to go all around the cup and up and down, making sure that I get the bottom and the top rims really well too. And again, I will be doing this 3 times. I will let each coat dry an hour between each coat. Did I say that right? Sorry. I will let each coat dry 1 hour before I go into moving with my second coat. I'm going to go right up to the seam, and I'm going to get really close to the seam, as close as I can get to the seam. But again, I don't want to get that flap. I don't want to Mod Podge the flap. I don't want it to get stuck to the cup. And then once I'm done this, I'm just going to let the cup dry upside down, and I will be back when this is all sealed up. And see, I'm doing the bottom now, so I made sure I got the bottom really well, got in there. All right, and then I will be back when I'm ready to move on to the next step. All right, I don't have anything more to narrate, so I'm just gonna let you listen to some wonderful iMovie music. All right, guys, so I have two coats of Mod Podge on this. And so what I'm gonna do is, before I do my 3rd coat, this is when I'm going to cut my excess fabric off, because I wanna be able to seal those ends really well. So I am just gonna cut off a piece of painter's tape and use that as a guide for a straight line for me, because yeah, I can't follow a straight line to save my life. So I'm gonna try doing this and hope that this works and I can get a nice straight line, but I'm not really good at that. So make sure your X-Acto knife is really, really sharp, like a new blade. Mine, I just put it in, so I'm hoping that I don't have to cut more than once. And I'm just gonna go down, I'm gonna follow this line, and hopefully it'll cut through the first time, but if not, I'll have to go through a second time. So let's see. Nope. So I do struggle with this a little bit, and this is why it's important that your fabric is like Mod Podged really well, so it's easier to cut, because it will grab if it's not solid enough. So like, I'm gonna kind of saw through this end. There we go. So this end is caught, like I didn't get, because this isn't sealed down enough. So there we go. All right, now I'm gonna take this off. So now I have a nice flush seam, but I need to glue this down really well. So, and I'm like stuck. Misty, stuck. Stuck. All right. So I do have one little fray here. I'm not really worried about that. All right, so we'll get that extra piece off. And now I'm going to Mod Podge over this one more time and get a nice thick coat over this so it seals it really well. And then it will be ready for the next step. What's up?
Recording?
Yes. Yeah, the sign on the door, it's recording. This is son number 2. What's up?
You didn't have your door closed.
I don't have to have it. Do you see the sign? Does it have to be closed?
Yes. Yes.
What's up?
That's my indication. Can you help me with the parachute?
The parachute? Okay. Yeah. Let me finish this and I will come help you with the parachute.
Alright. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. Life with kids. Alright, so I'm not going to show you this whole thing, but I just wanted to show you that I got, I'm getting this seam really well. And then I'm just going to, you know, go on with my third coat. And then when it dries, I'm going to let this dry overnight. It's going to be ready for the next step. Okay, guys? Back with this cup, it's been drying for about an hour, hour and a half. It's a tiny bit tacky, but what I want to do is before I let it sit and dry overnight, I do want to attach that jump ring. And so I'm showing you right now the bottom. It's nice and flat, like the fabric isn't buckled anywhere. You know, it's sealed really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put that jump ring on. We're going to make sure that the opening end is on towards the cup. I'm going to use UV resin. I'm going to put a dab there. Just sit it on top. I'm going to hold it and then use my light to harden it up. And then once I'm done with that, I am actually going to put another bead through the center and around it. So the reason why I'm doing it twice is because the first time I did this on another cup, it wasn't sealed well enough with the UV resin, so it actually like kind of came off when I was working with the cup. So I found that doing a bead like in the center like I just did sealed it on really well, so I didn't have to worry about that. So there is kind of like a little epoxy bubble like through the jump ring. I'm okay with that. You can sand that down a little bit more if you want, but I decided, you know, that I was okay with that. And you know, so I left it. And when I epoxy around it, I'm not gonna like epoxy on top of it so that it keeps building. I'm just gonna do around the jump ring, if that makes any sense. So that's attached now, and so I'm going to work on glitter in the bottom. So I am using this really pretty Friend Like Me. It matches that purple really, really well. It's got green flecks in there, super, super pretty. So I am just going to dump it on my catch sheet there, and I am going to Mod Podge the bottom, and then I'm just going to basically like dip the bottom in there and twist it around. So it's going to get the whole bottom of the cup and then up the side just a hair, just enough to where it meets the fabric and overlaps just a tiny bit. So I'm going to make sure that this has a nice even coat. We don't want it to be clumpy because it will show through the glitter. And I am just getting ready to press this down over the glitter, and I'm going to twist it so that the glitter goes up and around just a hair. And I love it. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It did exactly what I wanted to do. It's perfect. So now I'm going to let this cup dry overnight before I'm ready to move on to the next step with working with the cup. So when my cup is drying, I'm going to go in and make my heart mold. So what I'm doing here is just taking a piece of tape and making sure I get out any rogue glitter that may be just kind of loosely hanging around. And I mixed up a little bit more epoxy than I needed, actually a lot more than I needed, but I am dumping in this really pretty pink called Rustoluem, and I'm just mixing it up really well. I am gonna pour it in my mold. Now I'm gonna let this mold sit overnight, but I don't want it to cure fully, because what I want to do is in the morning I want it to be flexible so that I can mold it around the cup and then let it finish curing while it's molded around the cup. So I'm doing that, and I am going to give it a spritz of 91% alcohol to pop all the bubbles, and then we'll check it in the morning and see if it's ready to be wrapped around this cup. All right, this cup has been drying overnight, and I'm gonna seal the glitter on the bottom with Rust-Oleum's 2x Clear. I'm gonna give it 2 coats and let it dry for at least an hour in the sun before I move on to epoxy. All right, guys, so I'm gonna unmold this, and I'm pretty sure this is still flexible enough to, yeah, so it's not completely cured, so we can bend it. And I want to mold it around the cup. Now, I don't want to put it on this cup yet because I want to put epoxy on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this silicone and wrap it around another cup that is the exact same size. And then I am going to put this on, and I'm going to mold it around. I'm going to grab a couple of rubber bands. And I'm going to rubber band this. So the reason why I'm using this silicone mat is because this isn't fully cured, and sometimes when it's not fully cured, if you put it to a surface that's epoxied or even any other, other surfaces, it could cure to it. And this I'm like lost my train of thought. Like I did in my my tumbler tutorial with my dragon eyes. That's what I did. I actually let it cure on the cup, but I'm not ready for that, so I'm going to let it cure on this so that I can pull it off, and then I am going to go ahead and glue this on when I am ready. So I'm going to let this sit for at least a good 6 hours to further cure. And there's my girl. And I'm going to decide when. I'm not sure when I want to fill these up. I might do that soon. I might wait a little bit. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. So, all right. So, I got this here.
Ta-da!
What is that drawing?
A bird.
This is a bird?
Yeah.
I don't think that looks like a bird.
It's an angry bird.
It's definitely an angry bird. Ah! It's definitely an angry bird. Look at it. This is her angry bird. That's crazy. All right, silly girl. All right, so I'm going to let this cure for a few hours. I don't know. I said 6. I don't even know. I could not get back to this for days. So I just want to make sure that it is curled around really nice and well. Make sure there's no gaps. You got it all nice and flat. If you need to put more rubber bands, go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to let it sit on here while I continue to work on this cup, which is now ready for epoxy. So I'm going to be back when I'm doing the epoxy.
It's a vampire. It's a vampire bird.
No, it's a vampire bird. Okay, I'm ending it.
It's a vampire. No, bat. A vampire angry bird.
That's scary. Get that away. All right, first coat of epoxy is going on this cup. I am putting 20 mLs on a nice even coat as I normally would. I am just gonna make sure, it's evenly distributed around the cup, and I'm gonna make sure that it's evenly distributed around the jump ring too, because I don't want it to pull up too much around the jump ring. I've already got kind of like a little bubble in there, which is okay because I want to make sure I've got enough epoxy to hold that on. And so now I'm just going to go around the cup as I normally do, and I'm going to give this just one coat before I move on to the next step. And once you got your epoxy on the cup, don't forget to torch. And I'll say this as I always say it, torch over heat gun, because torch is better at popping bubbles, where the heat gun's really more for heating up the epoxy and moving it around. All right, so what I'm doing here is, because this heart was a keychain mold, there's a little hole there that I don't want. So what I'm gonna do is just fill it with this Goldfinch glitter, which is the same color that I used in the heart. I'm gonna just pour it in a little medicine cup. So I pour it in that hole. And then what I'm going to do is put in a little bit of the UV resin in the hole. And I really like that it has the fine tip, because it was, it was really nice for doing this. I'm going to mix it around with a toothpick, pour in a little bit, make sure it's flush. Then I'm going to cure it up, and that's how I'm going to fix this issue with this hole. All right, so this has been curing actually for a few days. It's been much longer than I anticipated. But anyway, so it's nice and cured, and it is the exact shape that I need. So now what I'm going to do is just glue it on with my E6000, put it some rubber bands around it to hold it in place, and let it dry for like an hour or two. Alright guys, I'm back with this cup. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I've been doing for this cup off camera, because if I did it on camera, it'd probably be 3 hours long. It's another one of those cups where there's kind of a lot of steps. So this has been drying for many hours because, of course, like always, I got distracted. And so it's on there. It's good and solid. It's not going anywhere. And so what I want to do is I'm going to flip to the other side, and this is where I'm going to put her picture. So I did her picture on printable vinyl, and see, here's the bandana that she used to wear. And I'm going to layer her over this heart. So, but what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to place this heart down with the dates that we rescued her. I don't know her date of birth because she was a rescue and they didn't know exactly how old she was. So I'm putting the year that I adopted her, the month and the year that I adopted her, up until the month that she crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. So I printed out this heart, and I'm just going to take it and place it on here. And you know, it's taken me a while to do this because I'm still so heartbroken. I miss her so much. She was so sweet, and we had her for so long, and you know, we're still getting used to her not being here. It's very strange. It's a very strange feeling. You know, 12 and a half years is a really long time. And so I'm gonna try not to get emotional. I'm not gonna get emotional. I promise I won't get emotional. So, all right, so I'm gonna speed this part up because it's just applying a little bit more vinyl. I'm trying to keep this video so it's not super long. There's a lot of steps, and so when you have a lot of steps in a cup, the videos, you know, I record every part of it, and then I just try to cut out the stuff that isn't important or speed up some of the stuff that, you know, you guys really know how to do, because really the focus of this cup was the wrap, the fabric wrap. And so all of the rest of this is just really showing you how I went through the motions in putting a cup like this together with all of the different steps. And so I'm putting all this vinyl down before I do a coat of epoxy because I want it to be nice and smooth before I put her picture down. I don't want any lines in her picture over the heart. So this is really it for narrating on this part. Just doing some reverse weeding. If you're not familiar with that, look up videos on how to reverse weed. I have not done one myself. But now I'm going to turn you over to some lovely iMovie music for just a few minutes. cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this side. So I am going to fill in the paw now. So the first thing I decided I wanted to do, and I thought would best do, is I'm going to just fill the paw a little bit with some UV resin first before I put the other resin in. So because I want to make sure that the resin doesn't seep like that. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's no, that there's no gaps or seepage, but you don't know. So I don't know. So I want to make sure that that nothing is going to seep through while it's curing. So I'm going to do some UV resin because that's like a quick freeze. And I lost my light. There's my light. Right? Because right. Remember, I'm never completely prepared. All right. So I'm just gonna put like little dabs in the holes. I'm actually only going to do these two. Like, I'm going to do two, and then I'm going to do the other two, and then I'm going to do this spot, and then I'm going to do the other resin over top. I've never done this before, guys, so I'm just kind of winging this. Sometimes you just got to wing it, and that's how you learn how to do things. So I'm showing you how I'm winging this. All right. So I'm going to do these two holes. And again, I'm just putting like a little bit at the bottom. Like, I'm not filling it up. I just want to seal any gaps that may be down there. And I'm going to do the last little bit in here. And really, I'm just going to hit the edges on this one. I don't even really care about getting it in the center. I'm just hitting the edges. All right, so I'm gonna hold this on for a few minutes, and I will be back when this is done and ready for the next step. All right, guys, so this is cured enough to move to the next step, but I decided that I'm gonna put this on here. It says Pretty Girl because that's what we used to call her all the time. We used to call her Pretty Girl. She was so sweet, and she was so nervous when we rescued her. She was clearly abused. She was super emaciated. And and my husband always has a thing. He's like, oh, she feels self-conscious. And he would always call her Pretty Girl. So we called her Pretty Girl. So I wouldn't put that on there because that's what her nickname was, Pretty Girl. Okay. So I already had some epoxy mixed up from something else that I did. And I'm going to get my gloves. Because what I've done is we had her cremated and we got her ashes, and so they're in a pretty little box that they provided us. So I took a little bit of her ashes out and I sifted them, so it's the consistency was much like that of the beach where there's some bigger pieces. So I put this through a sifter and got out any bigger pieces. So I wanted some fine pieces. I wanted it to be the finer pieces. So here is my epoxy. It's, I don't know, maybe 10 mLs. I'm gonna just dump a little bit in here. And mix it up. It's starting to thicken up a little bit, but that's okay. I'll put a little heat on. I can put a little heat on it and soften it back up. So it looks sandy, and so to pretty it up a little bit, I'm gonna put some of this ultra fine shimmer by Glitter Makes It. It's an ultra fine white with some like gold flecks in there, and then I'm gonna also throw in some of this pretty Goldfinch in there. Just a little bit of the pink in there. And I'm just gonna mix it up. my epoxy. My epoxy was sitting too long. I'm gonna have to get the heat gun on and soften it up a little bit. So if your epoxy has been sitting and it gets a little stiff like mine did, you could just throw some heat on it to kind of soften it up a little bit. And so now I'm just gonna scoop this in here. Very carefully. And then we have to wipe the edges. And earlier I made some dog tags for the family because they wanted keychains, because my boys grew up with her. My son Andrew was like 3.5 or 4 when we got her, and he just turned 16, so it's been an adjustment for all of us. All right, so I don't want to fill it all the way up too high because this cup is, you know, it's curved, so I'm gonna make sure I get this. It's actually better that this is thicker right now to work with. You know what, it's better that it's not runny for the way I'm using this. Like I'm filling this in here. So I just need to make sure that it stays in this position for when it cures, so it doesn't roll off of the one side or the other. And if it looks like it's rolling too much on this side, oops, I'm not gonna turn the cup. I'm just gonna take a little bit out. I hope this doesn't freak you guys out, you know, me using my dog's ashes. Somebody actually posted on Facebook, one of my friends, about her dogs. She wanted to do something with the ashes, and she wanted to know, you know, she wanted ideas, and I was like, you can put them in epoxy. You know, because a lot of people put them in jars and stuff like that and carry them around. But I thought, you know, putting them in epoxy was just a much better idea. So I'm going to shift that like that. I want to get a Q-tip and some alcohol and wipe around it because I did get some on the edges. Because it's not flat, it's going to be a little bit harder, but a little bit harder to fill, but I don't need to like fill it. I don't need it to be exactly like flush. It can be indented a little. That's, you know, that's completely okay. Grab my 91% alcohol. And I'm just gonna clean up around here. Alright, so right here seems to be a really good spot for it. I'm looking at it as far as being level and stuff. So I am gonna leave this like this to cure overnight. I'm not ready to put epoxy on because it's too late and I'm getting ready for bed, and I want also the vinyl on the other side to adhere to the cup. So, alright guys, so I will be back in the morning, and I will be ready to put my first coat of epoxy on. Alright, this cup has been drying overnight, and I'm actually going to put on a coat of polyacrylic before I do my first coat of epoxy. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this holographic vinyl tends to repel epoxy, and so I don't want it to repel because it's a big spot. So I'm just going to put a nice thin coat of polyacrylic on it, and I'm going to let it turn for about an hour to dry, and then I'm going to go in with my first coat of epoxy. Alright, my polyacrylic is dry, and so now I'm coming in with my first coat of epoxy over the decals, and I'm using 20 mLs of my quick coat epoxy. So I'm using the stone coat epoxy. I'm going to put a thin layer over the pink heart So that's going to seal in the paw print and the pretty girl decal. I'm going to be careful how I go around the heart with the epoxy. I'm doing it with my finger. I do not want it to pool because, you know, epoxy tends to pool around things like that. So I'm putting a thin layer on carefully around there and around the jump ring too, because I don't want that. I don't want it to pull up around there because there's already a little bump there. And then I'm just gonna put it on the rest of my cup, and I'm gonna let it turn for about 2 to 4 hours before it is ready for me to work on. And that would be the last thing I'm gonna do, is put her picture on this cup. And don't forget to torch out any bubbles. All right guys, so I've got a coat of epoxy on this so it's nice and smooth. And I did, you know, a coat over here. Before I did this though, and I didn't show this, but I took my rotary tool and I just went around the heart and I smoothed it out so it didn't have like really sharp edges. So so I went over with the epoxy, a very light coat, so that it, you know, it shined it right back up. But so everything is sealed in this cup really well. The dates and this heart. So I'm just gonna finish this off with putting her picture on here, which I use a program that takes the background off, and I will link that in the description down below so you can take a picture. And it works really well with removing the background so that you can just have like, you focus on an image. And so there's like a little piece. There we go, got that out. All right, so I'm just gonna put this on like a sticker, and I'm gonna put it right here. And then I'm just gonna put it down, and I'm gonna smooth this over. And so, you know, this cup is pretty much done, other than I put this on. I'm gonna put probably 2 coats of epoxy over this. I don't know, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna put a nice thick coat of epoxy on here and see if that seals it in really well, and then I can be done with it. Otherwise, it'll be 2 coats. I usually wind up doing 2 coats. But other than that, I am just gonna attach the dog tag that I never got to put on her collar on here, so it's gonna hang like this, and then I'm gonna be done with this cup. So I will be back when I put my epoxy on, and then after that will be my final remarks. All right, this is my last coat of epoxy. I am wiping the cup down with 91% alcohol, making sure that all of my fingerprints and stuff are off from working with it. I'm gonna put on 20 mLs of my regular set epoxy. I am gonna be careful to go around that heart again because I don't want it to pool up. So I'm just gonna make sure that I, you know, thin it out around there. And that is it. I only needed 1 coat. You know, it's filled in really nicely. It's settled in nicely is not the words I want to use. It leveled itself nicely. There we go. That's what I wanted to say. It leveled itself nicely. And so I didn't have much pulling around the heart, which was really good. And I'm super, super happy with the finish on it. And as always, after I do my epoxy, I am going to torch it with my kitchen torch. I'm going to go over it once as soon as I'm done with that. And then I am going to come back in 5 minutes. So I do like to torch 5 minutes after it's been turning to get any bubbles that sort of popped up afterwards. All right, guys, I am back with this tumbler. It took 1 more coat, and she is done. I really love how this came out. You know, I just have the jump ring with her dog tag that I actually never got to put on her, and the you know, her ashes are here in the paw print, and her nickname Pretty Girl. I do have some glitter on the bottom because, you know, we can't forget the pretty girl needs a little bit of sparkle in her life, and just a tassel, just, you know, to dress it up a little bit. So I'm, you know, super happy the way this turned out. You know, I need to cure another 72 hours or 24 hours before I can use it. But, you know, I look at her picture and I just remember, you know, how snuggly and how sweet she was, and you know, I totally miss her, and I think Mara the dog misses her more than everybody. He's still acting kind of strange, you know, it hasn't been that long, but thank you all for watching. Please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe, and don't forget to check the description below for a list of, or links to products that I used or where you can find them. And please leave a comment. I love to hear everybody's feedback. And that is it for this one. I will see you all next time. Bye.